All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. They'll be below the video if you're on a smaller screen, uh, to the right of the video if you're on a larger screen. So get your questions in there. A couple in there already. So get your questions in there so that way we can not be so boring here. Seems like this week there hasn't been a lot of questions, so it's just kind of been stone silence on here. So if you got your questions, make sure put them in there. All right. So we will start here with Gary L. So Gary L says, "Hi Q, I'm a right-handed player. Recently on my tee shots with the driver, I get severe pain in my left elbow as I finish the swing. Feels like tennis elbow. Please explain what caused this and what I need to do to correct the problem. Thank you, and I hope you have a fun weekend." All right, thanks, Gary. Sorry to hear about your elbow pain. So it's hard to see without knowing like the whole situation, kind of seeing what's going on and knowing exactly what you're doing and all that stuff. But typically when people have pain in their joints, kind of what you're talking about, it's due to just basically excessive nature. So if you think about this, if I waved at you, right, and I did this for an hour, right, I just sat here like this for an hour straight, right? Well, my wrist and my elbow would probably get sore. But that doesn't mean that I'm waving at you wrong. It just means that I did something. I did it in excess. So if you're hitting a lot of range balls, and you're not conditioned for that, that could be part of what's going on. Now, there are things that you could be doing within your swing that kind of accelerate the process and put excessive, more easily excessive on your joints. One of those is kind of basically not getting a lot of rotation and really pulling the arms up and in through contact. So, if you look at your swing on video and you're kind of coming in and doing this action through contact, that can put some stress on your arms there. So that might be something to look at. And if that is the case, I'd work on, trying to get your body rotating more and keeping your arms longer through contact, because what causes this to happen, often referred to as a chicken wing, is the lack of rotation of our body paired with the arms racing in front of the body, right? So if I don't rotate my body, then this club has to get to the ball somehow, right? And the way it's going to get to the ball is by the arms racing in front of the body. Well, if my shoulder doesn't keep going up and around from my body rotating, then my arm kind of has to fold up and I have to kind of pull it up and in like this. So if you're doing that a lot, right, I can see how that would cause some elbow pain. It could be something that's not caused by your swing or by excessive anything. It could be that you just have an elbow issue, and it may be something you need to talk to your doctor about. So that would definitely be my first. The first thing I do is maybe talk to your doctor about it. Look at your swing, think about how much you've been hitting balls and things like that. And that, all those factors can play a role in that pain happening there. So hopefully that helps. Sorry, I can't I don't know for sure what's going on, but hopefully that can get you in the right direction. All right, so keep the questions coming here. So Lee says, when you're hitting that first tee shot, what are your go-to swing thoughts to calm the nerves and increase the odds of hitting the sweet spot with a square club face? So basically, I don't really get that nervous about golf anymore. Really what it comes down to is it's just a game, right? It's just a game. It's not that big a deal. You got to think about what's the worst thing that can happen. If you top your first tee shot, who cares? So you basically have to not care about the worst result you can get. If you swing and miss the golf ball, maybe that's the worst thing that can happen. Well, you just try again. There's going to be a penalty stroke or whatever, but you're going to live to see another day. So it's just not that big a deal. So I think you kind of have to look at it in that way and just go play. It's a game. Go play it. And it's not, I assume it's not your livelihood. I assume you're not a professional golfer. But, for basically everyone who's not a professional golfer and doesn't need to do it for a living, it's going to be fine. You're going to be all right. So that's the way I would look at it. It's just a game. Go out, play, have fun. What's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, whatever the worst thing that can happen, it's honestly not that bad. So just go and play. So that's the way I would that's kind of the mindset that I would adopt with that. So Dave W says, would you use the skipping a stone action on chip shots or not? So I would say yes, but to a lesser extent, right? So obviously, if a chip shot has a lot less speed behind it, right? A chip shot is just that. So it's not. It's more like maybe kind of tossing a ball toward the target. So imagine you had a ball here and you're just kind of underhand tossing it. I would probably have more of because the skipping a stone, there has to be some speed behind that to be able to get it to skip, right? To be able to get a stone to skip. You can't lightly toss a stone into the water and expect it to skip. It's gonna just right in there. So I would say it's more like maybe tossing a rock into the water, or imagine you're tossing the ball, because basically what you're doing is you're just throwing the club head into the back of the ball, right? And that's that tossing motion. So for a little chip shot, I wouldn't go like it would be too fast. You don't need to have that feeling. I would try to have the feeling like you're almost just tossing it, tossing a ball. It would be kind of the feeling that you would want to have. And I really like that feeling too, because imagine, because a lot of people who struggle with chipping, they're trying to do it all arms and wrists, and that just makes it really, really hard to control. Whereas if I toss a ball, I wouldn't go like this, right? I would open up my hips and my chest, and I would toss it kind of like that. And that's how we want to chip as well. We want to have that same kind of chipping sensation that we're just tossing it up there, and that should help you too, with your chipping motion for sure. All right, keep it coming. If you're just jumping on here, I'm just waiting for some new questions. So if you got questions, go ahead and post them on there. We'll get them answered today. All right. So JR says, I've gotten the initial takeaway correct, going to a full turn. When can I begin the left wrist? When can I begin bowing the left wrist? I have a difficult time getting to the top and then bowing the wrist. You can start bowing the wrist at any time. You just got to find, the only thing that matters is how it's being delivered to impact. So if bowing the wrist right away in the backswing makes it easier to get it in the right position at impact, then great. If bowing it in the start of the downswing gets it in a good position for you to bow it to have it in a good position at impact, then great. Wherever you want to do it to get it into a good position at impact is where to do it. So it's really, there's a lot of different ways to do it. So yeah, that's you do what works best for you. There's no right or wrong time. It only matters how it's being delivered to the ball, right? That's it. That's the only thing that matters. So just do it at whatever time in the swing that allows you to deliver it at the right time. So play around with it. See what works best for you. Try it in the very beginning of the swing. Try it halfway up. Try it in the transition. Try it, part of the way down, right? Typically, once you get to this point in the swing, things are moving too fast. If it's not happening already, it's not going to happen most likely. So, or you're not going to be able to actively, do it because these things are just happening too fast. But that's, try to do it at different points in the swing and see what works best for you. There's no one time when all the best players do it. Some players do it, some in the backswing. You look at Dustin Johnson, John, there's a lot of great players that already have that wrist bowed at the top of the swing, right? They're doing it in the backswing. So you can do it in the backswing. You can do it in the transition. You can do it in the start of the downswing. Any of those is completely fine. All right. Keep them coming here. So Mark says, could you describe what you do with your hands through and after impact? Can you be a little bit more? I mean, if you're asking a very vague question, I can only give you a very vague answer. Hold on to the club. That's all I can really tell you. So ask more specific question if you want a specific answer, because that's not what are you doing with your hands? You're holding on to the club. That's what you're doing. I'm sure you already know that, right? So what, I guess the better question is, why are you asking the question? That's what I would think about. What are you going to do with that answer to the question? So that's, the hands can be doing a lot of different things depending on your grip, depending on, how you're releasing the club. It just depends. There's no one definitive answer to here's what every single player does with the hands. The only thing I can tell you is every single tour player is holding on to the club. I can tell you that. Every single tour player is holding on to the club. Every single tour player has a flat to bowed lead wrist at impact and an extended back trail wrist at impact. At some, they have it like this. There are no tour players that are like this. Not a single one that has cup in their lead wrist and has that kind of a flat or even bowed trail wrist, right? They're all going to be like this, right? So either flat, if they're a stronger grip, they're going to be more flat. If they're a weaker grip, it's going to be more bowed, and the trail wrist is going to be more extended back, right? There's going to be some amount of rotation of the hands, depending on the player. Some players have more rotation of the hands because the face is more open back here and they need to close it as they're coming into contact. Some players are going to have that face in a stronger position and there's going to be less rotation of the arms through impact, right? So there's no one definitive thing. It's the hands are going to be, the lead wrist is going to be flat to bowed somewhere in that range. The trail wrist is going to be some amount extended. You're going to be holding on to the club, and the arms are going to be rotating. The wrists are going to be rotating to a varying amount through contact, right? That's what the best players are doing. There's something doing that. The players that struggle with making good contact, getting compression, shaft lean, are typically going to have some cupping in that lead wrist. They're going to have some, pushing of the trail wrist too much, right? There's typically going to be a fair amount of face rotation, more face rotation that you're going to see than most players. There's typically going to be more rolling of the wrists through impact with poor ball strikers. But yeah, generally better ball strikers are going to have stronger wrist angles to help them get shaft lean. So Dave W says, I see the tour players finish fully turned and really high hands. Is this a result of doing other things, or should you make a conscious effort to finish like this? So the answer, it could be both, right? So it's definitely they're letting all the momentum go of their swing. But people ask me these questions all the time. Am I actively doing this? Am I consciously doing this? Is this natural or whatever it is? And the answer to the question is if you look on video and you see, let's say you take a swing and you have no swing thoughts. You're just swinging. You see ball, you hit ball, right? Well, that's your natural swing. Everything that you did there was completely unconscious, right? You just saw ball and hit ball. You weren't thinking about how your body was moving at all. It was completely unconscious, right? So that's your answer to your question. What you saw there is what you do consciously. If there's something you want to do in your swing and you're not seeing it in your unconscious swing, then you are going to have to make some sort of conscious effort to make it happen until you don't anymore. So what that means is you have to work through what's called the stages of learning. There's 4 stages of learning. The first stage is unconscious incompetence. So this is where you're unaware that you even want to come around and do a full finish or what that is, right? You're just unaware of it, right? And then you see all the tour players doing it and you move into the second stage, which is called conscious incompetence. This is where now you become aware of it. Like, oh, all these tour players are doing this. Why am I not doing it? Right. And then you move into, so within the second stage, sorry, you know what it is, you're aware of what it is, but you're not able to do it. You don't know how to do it. You can't do it and you're not able to do it. So then you move into the third stage, which is conscious competence. This is where you are able to do it, but you have to think about it in order to do it, right? So that's basically what it comes down to. And then you have to keep doing that until you don't have to think about it anymore. You do it so many times that you don't have to do it anymore. And then at that point, that's stage 4, which is called unconscious competence. So you may not realize this, but you've gone through the stages of learning with pretty much every skill that you know how to do that you don't really have to think about it. So typing is something that most people, you don't have to put a lot of thought into it, right? You just think the words and then your fingers do it, right? You've worked through the stages of learning. At one time, you didn't know what typing was, and you then saw what typing was, but you didn't have the skill to be able to do it. You're like pointing and pecking, and then you got faster and faster and learned how to do it. And then you got to where you're just typing words and you're not thinking about what your finger's doing. You're not thinking, oh, my pinky goes over here and does this to do a backspace, right? You just think backspace and it happens. There's no conscious, you're not conscious of the movement that you're making. It's just automatic, right? So that's basically what it comes down to. So that's not to say that you can't think. Basically the moral of the story is that nothing is going to automatically happen without you consciously trying to do something, right? You have to, if you see something in your swing that you want to do, it's not going to happen just out of nowhere, right? You're going to have to change or consciously do something in order to make it happen. So Lee M says, FYI, I can only see you on YouTube, but no video audio on the TSG website. That's weird. Said it was set up. All right, let me check. Yeah, it looks like it's working fine, actually.
Yeah, it looks like it's working fine.
I'm sorry for that echo here. So I think that's on your end, Lee. If you're having issues with that, it looks like it's working on the website, from what I can tell. And I also got confirmation from Todd here. So now, granted, it is YouTube that's embedded into the website, so maybe that's what you're seeing. But yeah, it seems to be working. All right. Yeah, keep the questions coming here. Keep going. In the meantime, I'll be answering some other things, some emails and stuff. Waiting for a question. So Todd C. Monit says, "What are swing thoughts to help with flattening wrist at impact?" Well, really, it's this, right? So that's what we need to be um, thinking about. So the first thing that I would do is strengthen the grip. If you're having trouble with getting the wrist to be in more of a flat or even bowed position, you need to go with a stronger grip because it's going to make it a heck of a lot. Because the weaker your grip is, the more you have to bow the wrist, right? So, and there are lots of players that have really weak grips and play really well. Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, John Rahm, like all these players have fairly weak grips. But if you look at their wrist angles at the top of their swing and at impact, it's very bowed. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to do. So if you're struggling with that, I recommend a stronger grip because you don't have to have as bowed of a wrist at impact. You don't have to have it bowed at all. You can be flat, right? So if I have a really weak grip, meaning my thumbs are like on top, right? So thumbs are more on top of the grip. Right, so if I'm more like that and I come to impact, right, and I want to have shaft lean and square face, look at what my lead wrist has to do. It has to be bowed, right, at impact. Whereas if I have a strong grip where my wrists are more like this, right, I can come to impact with shaft lean, and now my wrist can be flat. It looks like it might be cupped, but it's actually flat. If you look at it from this angle, it's flat, right? So that is what it comes down to. So if you're struggling with cupping the wrist, with getting too much cup in the wrist, I would look at, one thing that I like to do, and one thing that I see a lot of players doing is they like to set up with the shaft straight up and down, which automatically puts cup in your wrist at address. So have a little bit more of forward press in your wrist, and that will get some of the cup out of your wrist to begin with, and that can definitely help, right? So if you kind of already set up in a very close to impact position with your hands. So if I'm like this and I have a strong grip and I get into a pretty near impact position, like honestly, if I got my hands in this kind of position at impact, I'd be pretty happy, right? So in here, I got some spine tilt. My hands are I'm pretty relaxed with my hands. Like I'm not pushing my hands forward or anything. My lead arm is kind of hanging straight down, right? So it's I have some shaft lean here, and I have a little bit of cup in my wrist, but not very much, and it makes it easier. So if you're setting up with a lot of cup in your wrist to begin with, you just have that much more to get out of it. So that might be something that can help is to do that. So what I would try to do if you're really struggling with it, I would go with always be bowing it, right? So I'd be trying to bow it at all times. So stronger grip, and then I'd be trying to bow it throughout the backswing and the downswing throughout the entire swing, and then ease off of it where you need to. That would be my best advice to go through that. So if you actually get to where the face is too close, then you can start bowing it, right? Or if you get to where it's too close, you can get to where you're just easing it off in different places. So maybe you're easing off of it a little bit in the backswing, and it's only happening in the downswing and the impact. If it's still closed, then you can think about it happening a little bit later. So that'd be my best advice to look at. And I'd maybe look at your swing and see, because a lot of times if you bring the club way inside and then push it up, right? So if you bring the club way inside like this, and then you push it up and flatten out this wrist, because that's what you want to keep in mind too, is that bowing this wrist goes along with extending back this wrist. If this wrist is doing this, it's going to push into that wrist, right? So that's something that I see all the time as well, people who struggle with that really cupped wrist at the top are going like that with their trail wrist, right? So they're really flattening out their trail wrist and pushing their trail wrist into this and putting their lead wrist in this position. That trail wrist and that elbow needs to be more in to put it in a better position. So hard to say without seeing your swing, but I'd be focusing on stronger grip and maybe looking at, if you're really struggling with getting this wrist in a good position, it's probably because your trail wrist and your elbow, your trail arm is pushing on it and making it difficult. So you really need to feel like your trail arm and your trail wrist. Try to get your trail arm as much in as you can, and your trail wrist as back as you can, because that's going to make it easier for this wrist to be bowed, right? The more my arm is like this, right? So let's say my elbow goes this way and my wrist goes that way. That's going to make it very difficult for my wrist to bow. I basically can't bow it if it's in that position. So those would be the things I'd be looking at. All right, so let's keep going. So Mauricio R says, is the wide of the stance relevant for distance or consistency? Yeah, absolutely. So if our stance is really narrow, right, then it's hard to use the ground and push into the ground. I can't really shift, you can't really put a lot of pressure into the ground if your feet are really close together, right? So I can't really shift pressure hard into my trail foot and then shift pressure hard into my lead foot. It's very difficult to do if my feet are really close together. Now, what's easier if my feet are close together is controlling the bottom of my swing. That's why we use our feet close together with chipping, because it's a lot easier to control the bottom of your swing if your feet are close together, right? If my feet are farther apart, then I'm going to be shifting more. If my feet are close together, I'm not going to be shifting as much. I'm going to be turning more, and it's going to be easier to control the low point of my swing. But for chipping, I don't need power, right? I don't need that big weight shift and power. I need control of the bottom of my swing, which is what this provides. So that's why that's why that works. Now we want a wider stance, right? When we're trying to deliver, when we're trying to shift pressure, right? If I have a wider stance, now I can shift pressure this way, load up, and shift pressure that way, and load up much more easily. I can put a lot more in the ground. Just stand up and do that. Put your feet a couple inches apart and try to shift pressure. It's just hard to do, right? Whereas if I get them, shoulder width or so apart, well, now I can shift pressure here, shift pressure there, because I can actually move my body back and forth. So I can shift, turn, and I can put in a lot more force into the ground and be able to create more speed, right? Now, obviously, there's a point of diminishing returns, right? If I get in like a sumo stance here, it's just hard to move, right? So you have to find that happy medium. Generally, what I find is that for an iron, the center of the ankles, about shoulder width apart, is a pretty good place to be. So if you were to draw a line straight up from my ankles, it would be right outside my shoulders, right? For a driver, it's usually about a few inches wider than that. So the inside of my ankles, the inside of my heel here, to the outside of my shoulder. That would be a good space. So this would be like my driver swing, where I would be right around in this area. And it doesn't mean, these are just generalizations, just stuff that I found in my own. This is purely anecdotal. I don't have any scientific evidence to back this up. This is just what I have found with myself and working with other students. Generally, this is a good place to be. That doesn't mean that you may not be better at hitting your driver with a little bit narrower stance or even a wider stance. Brooks Koepka has a super wide driver stance. Works pretty dang good for him, right? So it's not that it doesn't work. There's some players that have narrower driver. Tony Finau has a pretty narrow driver stance. Hits the ball a long way. So there's definitely, places where there's going to be off the norm there. But yeah, the width stance definitely controls, or definitely makes a difference in how much pressure you can put into the ground. It's just harder to put in pressure into the ground if your feet are narrow. Obviously, but there's a point of diminishing returns. If you get too wide, then you can't really turn your hips. So you got to play around with it. But those guidelines that I mentioned are a good place to start. So William W says, any drills or recommendations for getting better hitting the ball on the grass versus off the tee? Yeah, so it's all about making ball first contact, right? So if you hit off of a tee, you can hit up on the ball, right? Meaning your club can bottom out before the ball and then work up into the ball. Whereas when you hit the ball off of the ground, right, you have to hit down on the ball a little bit, right? And you have to have the bottom of the swing in front of the ball. Right? So if I use this hula hoop as an example, let's say that this ball is on a tee, right? Well, and this is my swing arc, right? So this is the arc that the club is moving on. So if the ball is elevated on a tee, let's say that this is ground level right here. This ball is elevated on a tee, then my ball or my club, excuse me, can bottom out and then work up and hit the ball. Whereas let's say that this ball is on the ground, right? Well, ground level's right here. Well, if I do that, the ground level's right here. This ball's on the ground level's right here. Then I'm going to be hitting the ground back here way before the ball. That's going to be a big chunk shot. So I actually have to do this. If my ball is on the ground, I need this club to work down, hit the ball, and then work into the ground and then out, right? So you have to look at, what might be going on in your swing that's not allowing you to do that. So a lot of times it's just a bad weight shift. That's typically the biggest thing is if you're having trouble hitting the ball off of the ground, it's usually, and I'm assuming since you're asking that question, you're probably, somewhat of a beginner golfer. So I would say there's probably two things going on there. One is the sensation of hitting the ground. So when you hit shots off of the turf, you got to get the sensation of hitting the ground, right? You pretty much got to hit the ground. Otherwise, I mean, in some way or fashion, even if you're hitting it a little bit, you got to hit the ground some. So that would be the first thing I would say, get comfortable with hitting the ground. So that might be, just putting, some tees in the ground and clipping some tees at first and getting used to hitting the tee and then hitting the ground in front of the tee and getting comfortable with that. And then I would start adding the golf balls, right? Now, if you're finding that you're having you're good at hitting the ground, but you keep hitting behind the tee, right, before the tee where the ball would be, then what I would recommend doing is work on getting a good weight shift to the lead side, right? So, because if you're not getting that ground in front of the ball contact, then what's probably happening is you're going up here and then you're hanging back. Your body's kind of hanging back and you're hitting the ground back here. Whereas we need to get here and then shift our weight forward. And then that's going to allow us to hit the ground in front of the ball. So those would be the two things I'd be looking at. Get comfortable with hitting the ground and then work on get a good shift your weight to the lead side before you start your downswing to help you hit the ground in front of the ball. Some good drills for that would be the stop chunking and topping course. That's a course that's included with your membership. To get to the course, just click the house icon at the top of the page, scroll down on that home page there, and you'll see a list of all the courses. Select the stop chunking and topping course to get some good weight shift drills. All right, let's keep going. So Dana S says, was telling Clay yesterday I was finally getting a good draw with my driver and getting some distance. I mentioned I had to move the ball away from my left foot and more to the center. Other than the ball not flying so high, but getting better distance, do you see any faults with play the ball more to the center, like my fairway woods? Yeah, you're going to be hitting down on it some amount. It's not going to be before it sounds like you're probably cutting across it, right? Probably not hitting it solid because the club's working to the left. I would like you to start creeping that more toward the front of your foot and work on getting the club to work from the inside, right? So when the ball's forward in our stance, right, our club's going to tend to want to work more to the left by the time it gets to the ball, right, because it's more forward in the stance. So the more forward we have it in our stance, to be able to come into the ball with on plane, what we have to do is we have to actually swing more from the inside to make that happen. So if you have the ball more in the middle of your stance with your driver, you're going to be hitting it down on it some, and you're going to tend to add spin and it's going to be very spinny and not very high off the ground. And you're not, you're probably hitting it farther now just because you're hitting it more solid, but you could be getting more distance if you put it more forward in your stance and then had the club hitting up into the ball with center face contact and the club on plane. So I would start to try to creep it more forward in the stance and have the sensation of swinging more and more from the inside, so that way you can stay on plane with it. But yeah, the problem is that you're just not going to hit it very high, and you're going to add spin, which is also going to make it not go very far eventually. All right, so Tom C says, hi, Q. When I talked with one of the very good players I play with occasionally and asked him to help me, he told me to ignore YouTube videos and go see a PGA professional, whatever that means. So I have to ask, are all you guys PGA professionals, and is his advice correct? I have a 9 index. So I think what he's saying there is stop seeking like the quick tip and get professional advice from someone, right? So that's really what it comes down to is, the videos, we make YouTube videos, we put them out there, and the intention of the YouTube videos is to hopefully get you guys to come and do our system of videos and maybe work with us one-on-one, like what he's saying to do, right? But not everyone has the means to do that. I mean, you see what our online swing reviews costs. It's, anywhere from $200 to $300 a month. And, to do an hour lesson with Robin, I think it's like $200 an hour, right? So that can get pretty expensive. A YouTube video is free. So I can see how it's pretty enticing. And then, we have a price for the membership, which I can't remember how much that is, but also substantially less. So basically, we're just, we're giving you an avenue. It depends on what your means are and what, what it means to you and things like that. So in a perfect world, everyone would get a lesson from a golf instructor. In a perfect world, that's what would happen. But that's not, necessarily, going to be the case for everybody. Now, I'm not saying that YouTube videos don't help. It certainly can. If you have, I think the problem with the YouTube videos is that people watch a lot of the YouTube videos and they try to apply everything. And, not every YouTube video is going to help you specifically, because it may not be attacking your problem. It can just fill your head with all these different things instead of the things that are specific to you. So that's what I try to do with my students is we try to narrow down the one thing that we need to work on to get better. And then we stick with that thing. And sometimes it can be a task in and of itself as a coach to kind of force to force everybody to, hey, because I'll tell them to go do one thing, and then they'll send me videos doing completely something else and talking about, well, this isn't what we talked about. This isn't what's going to make you better. You skipped over it and decided and watched a YouTube video or another video on the site. So the whole idea here is, we're trying to keep you interested, but we really want you to work through the Top Speed Golf system or work with an instructor, right? Work and get help on the things that are specific to you. Now, as far as a PGA professional is concerned, so I'm not a PGA professional. Neither is Clay. I think neither is Chris or Michael. Robin was in it for some time, but I don't know that if he's still in it or not. But he was at one time like an apprentice or whatever it is. So here's the thing about the PGA professional thing. I have an engineering degree. I went to school for mechanical engineering, got my degree, did that for like 7 or 8 years, and then decided and was doing kind of like golf instruction on the side a little bit. I played in college and was always interested in it. But only did it kind of on the side off and on for, the time I was as an engineer, and decided, hey, I want to make a career of it. And then that's basically what happened. But I didn't go and get my PGA professional thing. You don't have to have, if you want to be a golf instructor, you can certainly be a golf instructor. It just takes, the the go-to, there's certain jobs where you have to have a degree. Like if you want to be a teacher, you have to get your bachelor's or whatever. Even if you want to be an engineer, we actually had, where I worked, we had lots of guys that were engineers that didn't have an engineering degree, but just knew how to do everything, right? So, it's more about what you know and not necessarily where you went to school and stuff like that. But I looked into the PGA professional route, but I decided it was not for me because one, at the time for me, it cost a lot of money and there was a lot of hoops you had to jump through to be able to do it. And it's mainly geared toward people that want to run golf courses. That's in my opinion. I could be, somebody could say that I'm wrong or whatever it is, but it's mainly geared toward people that want that. They're looking for jobs to be like a head professional on a golf course. I had no interest in running a golf course. I have no interest in that. I do not want that job. I don't envy the people that are in those positions. I know a lot of the guys in that profession, and it's a tough job. And I was just not interested. Robin used to do that. Clay did that for a time as well. All I was interested in was being an instructor. That's the only part I was interested in. So I just did my best to do it, and now I'm here doing it. So that's basically what it comes down to. So I wouldn't listen to you have to go see a PGA professional because it's not necessarily true. What my best advice would be to, luckily with YouTube or whatever it is, there's lots of instructors on YouTube, and lots of them are not PGA professionals, such as myself, Clay, or whatever. You have an opportunity to kind of get to know the instructor in what they, to know, like, okay, does this instructor know their stuff? So I would recommend working with someone like that, or, maybe if you have a buddy that took a lesson from somebody, PGA professional or not, and it worked really well, that might be a good place to go as well if you're looking for in-person lessons. We also offer unlimited swing reviews, which is an online lessons that you can sign up with the instructor. It's month to month, and you get as many online lessons as you want. What's cool about that is basically you get a month of unlimited lessons that are online that for the cost of what basically an hour or two lesson would cost, if you were to do in person. So there are things that are better in person. So in person wise, it's, you get, basically the instructor is guiding you and making you do everything. Whereas an online lesson, I can only tell you what you need to do, but you have to take responsibility of doing it. So that's kind of what it comes down to. So, I can't set up the camera and do the filming for you. You have to do that. I can't make you stick to the process and stick to what we're doing. You have to take responsibility for doing that and focusing on that. And I can't make you, give me feedback or whatever it is. You have to take responsibility for doing that. Whereas in an in-person lesson, right, I'm going to set up the camera. You're not going to have to worry about it. I'm going to video it. I'm going to look at it. If you're kind of moving off the beaten path as we're going along, I'm going to put you right back in there. Right. And if, I'm going to also be asking you questions the whole time, and you're going to be giving me feedback. So in an online lesson, you have to take the responsibility of doing that. Or because the online lesson, if you don't do that, you can waste a lot of time because then you're just going to get me coming back to you saying, hey, this is not what we talked about. You're going off on a tangent, right? You're not following directions. Or, hey, you'll send a video and the camera will be way off. I can't see anything that's going on, so I can't help. Or, or I have to, or you send videos and you don't send email feedback with it, then I have to get in contact with you to send me email feedback, and then you still have to give it back. So if you feel like you're someone that needs to have your hand held along the way the whole time, like telling you what you need to do, then you definitely need to do the in-person lessons. But if you're someone that feels like, oh yeah, I can definitely do that, I can set up the camera, that's easy, I can stick to what you're talking about and not go watch a bunch of other YouTube videos and go down different rabbit holes and things like that. And no problem. I can send you email feedback. Then I would. That's where unlimited swinger views are a lot better, because you're just going to get way more bang for your buck. Because for that reason. So that's why I typically recommend that, because you're just going to get so much more for whatever it is, $250 a month, whatever. I'm not sure what the price is right now. Like, you're going to get so many more lessons. So that's what I'd recommend if you feel like you can do that. If not, then yeah, the in-person lesson route might be the best route for you. And we do offer in-person lessons. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do it just with all my responsibilities and stuff with Tosby Golf, but Robin does all of our in-person lessons. So if you're interested in coming in, you're going to be in the Orlando area, want to do some in-person lessons, Robin's your guy. Just click the instruction tab at the top, and then there's a link there for in-person lessons if you want more information on that. But if you want to check out the swing reviews, click the Get a Review link at the top of the page. And let me see. We do have limited spots available, just because, it's not an unlimited people that we can work with. I do have to sleep sometimes. So I have some spots available right now. And it's like Robin's full, Chris is full, and Michael's full. So right now I'm the only one that has spots available. So I don't always have spots available. So if you're interested in working with me, click the Get a Review link and click the page, and we can get working on improving your golf game. I think I also like the swing reviews in a sense, because it teaches you how to get better. Because I think that a lot of people get off a beaten path and they're just overthinking everything. They're trying to fix 100 things in their swing and all these things like that. And it can be really, really difficult. I get people all the time that say, "Oh, I'm working on my stable fluid spine, the power turn, and the lag course." And you should only be working on one of those things, right? Because you cannot do all of them at one time. You just can't. And if you're trying to, then you're just not going to get anywhere. So I recommend working through the levels. If you stay really focused on one thing, then it's like, I a lot of times I use the analogy, texting and driving, right? So if you're texting really well while you're driving, you're probably not going to be driving very well. You're probably going to be crashing into stuff. You're much more likely to get in a crash, right? Whereas if you're driving really well while you're trying to text, probably not texting very good, or you're not doing either of them very well. So you can't really, your brain can't focus on two things at once doing them very well. So work on one thing, get that to where it's really good, and then go on to a different thing. And if you do that, then you have no choice but to get better, because you're always getting better all the time. But I think everyone just wants everything at once. And then when they try to do that, you end up just kind of spinning your wheels and you don't get better at all. So that's what I recommend doing. All right, so let's keep going. We got about 10 minutes left here. All right, we got questions. A couple more questions come in. All right, so Tom C says, if I remember correctly, to get maximum distance by shooting a projectile, you should shoot it at a 45-degree angle. But golf balls may be different with spin rates and roll distance on the ground. So maybe on the soft fairway, tee the ball very high, but on a hard fairway, tee it low to get more roll. Does that seem right? Yeah, depending on. I mean, you could look at it that way. More carry on softer for sure, and then um, you know, really hard fairways. Maybe try to hit it lower. Yeah, you could look at it that way. It's fine, but generally, I would recommend kind of sticking to one kind of ball height, right? Um, and not be. It's just too difficult with the driver to try to raise and lower that, especially for most people. So I would try to stick to one that's maybe somewhere in between, and then you'll be just fine. You don't have to have all these different kinds of shots that you have to try to hit for different, and you don't have to rely because it might be hard fairways, but you might hit a soft bounce, right? And then if you want to hit it high, that ball's in the air for a long time, and that can be difficult to do in the wind or something like that. So I'd recommend just having something that's in between that you pretty much use all the time. So Rod says, I missed the response regarding the left elbow pain. Is there somewhere I can get that? Get to that. Yes. So all the office hours are archived. So once we get off here, I'm not sure about how long it takes for it to process or whatever. But once we get off here, sometime after we get off here, it gets put in the office hours archive. And you can access that by going to the office hours tab at the top, then go to office hours highlights. If you scroll down to the bottom of the office hours highlights page, you'll see the archive where you can see all of the last office hours. So yeah, I believe that was the first or second question that I answered. So yeah, she'll be able to access that later on. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly when it goes on, but it will be on there later. All right, so Dan S says, as a scenario, my swing speed is max 105, but most of the time 95-ish, 63 and healthy and strong, but not sure if I can get faster or just bad technique. Is tis a good thing for a swing review to try to fix? Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be. Yeah, I don't see why not. I've done lots of distance clinics and gotten guys lots and lots of speed. So getting distance really, it's really not. I think people try to complicate it a little bit more, but it's really not that complicated. It's number one. It's creating more space and time to accelerate the club. So big turn, high hands. That's going to create more space. So if you think about it, if you're going sledding, right, and you want to have the fastest speed at the bottom of the hill, you're going to find the tallest and the steepest hill, right? And that's what it's creating more space to accelerate the club. So high hands and big turn, that's the tallest and the steepest hill. So that's number one. Number two is basically how you're putting force into the ground, right? So your sequence of how you're putting force in the ground and how much force you're putting into the ground. So are you pushing into the ground at the right times? And are you maxing out the amount that you can push into the ground, right? So if we're not really pushing into the ground very much and we're just swinging our arms back and forth, you're just not going to create a lot of speed. We need to be pushing into the ground. And that's kind of what the sumo step drill is, right? It's forcing you to push into the ground to accelerate the club. So that would be one. The way that we kind of load and unload the club, right? And all these have some overlap, right? So if I'm pushing into the ground going back, that can help me to certainly create a bigger turn. It can also help me to kind of load the club better. And if I'm pushing into the ground the right way, it can also help me to unload the club better. So when I'm talking about load and unload, I'm talking about some of it is turn, but how we're kind of creating this this hinge here, right? Creating some lag and then releasing that lag. So imagine if I don't really load my wrists here at all and then try to swing, it's just not going to be very fast. Whereas if I load my wrists, I get my wrists loading and then I unload that can be a lot faster. So that's like the boomerang drill, right? The whiplash drill. That's loading and unloading the club. So that's part of it. And then the last part of it is just swinging with 100% effort. Psycho mode, right? You say you're healthy. There's no if you're healthy and if you're in good health and physical condition, there's no reason why you can't go psycho mode and try to hit the ball as hard as you can. So the reason why that helps you get more speed is because it's teaching your body to swing faster, right? It's getting your body used to, like, okay, this is what we need to do. I need to recruit more, basically more muscle to create this movement, right? Our body abides by something called the size principle, right? So it's only going to recruit enough energy, the minimum amount of energy to make things happen, right? So if I'm going to take a drink here, my body is only going to do that the minimum amount that it has to. It's not, if it did it to the max, then I would just throw this cup into my face. You know what I mean? So, but we have to kind of get the sensation that we're doing that. So when you're speed training, you're not accuracy training. You're trying to get your body used to creating more, creating more speed. And then if you do that, then your playing speed will go higher, right? Your playing speed will go up because your body's now gotten used to swinging faster. So it's raised, it keeps raising its ceiling. So that's, those are really the things that I'd be looking at. So yeah, I mean, those are things that we can pick out in your swing and look at for sure. So Dan, if you want to start working on some speed, let's do it. Let's sign up for the swing reviews and let's take a look and get to work. All right, so David I says, I thought there was a lesson about high hands in the backswing, skyscraper, but I can't find it now. Can you tell me where it is? Yes, I was just talking about that. That's actually the 20-minute distance fix. So if you're ever looking for something and you can't find it, our website actually has a really good search engine. You can search skyscraper on the website. But I believe the skyscraper drill is in week 3 of the 20-minute distance fix. So if you go instruction tab, 20-minute distance fix, and then go to week 3, I believe it's in there. It might be week 2, but I'm pretty sure it's week 3. I'm pretty sure it's the last drill from the 20-minute distance fix. So yeah, skyscraper is there. But yeah, if you're ever looking for a video, if you're on the regular website in the right hand side, there's a box there, a search box. You can just search skyscraper. I can't remember if it's 2 words or 1 word on the website, but if you search one of those, you're gonna find it. So you can search it there. If you're on the mobile site, the search engine isn't as obvious, but you can find it. In the upper right hand corner, there's an icon there. They call it a hamburger icon. It looks like 3 horizontal lines. If you select that, then expand the menu. Scroll down to the bottom of that menu, and you'll see the skyscraper, or excuse me, you'll see the search box there. So that's another way you can search it. But yeah, it's in the 20-minute distance fix, last drill, I believe. David I says, found it. Thanks. No problem, David. Glad to help. All right. It's pretty much 11:59 noon right now. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks, everybody, for joining me. We'll be back here Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to y'all next time.